It's always a pleasure to do a session at JLF, but I've rarely done a session at JLF where I look around the audience and see someone that I know well in almost every row. So that's a little intimidating. Anyway, so great to have you all here. Arun's book is about how we should remake our future. Along the way, you get a lot of his very nicely thought out opinions of what we should remake to and what we should remake about and get to. But it's really a book about process. It's a book about how. He's one of the leaders in the country on a field that's called systems thinking. And he's used this field to work with many companies around the country and indeed overseas as well. Ramesh is one of our foremost scientists, and even more distinctive than that, he's one of our foremost science administrators. We have very few science administrators and leaders who've taken our scientific institutions and made them different. And Ramesh did that in very difficult circumstances and for institutions that didn't think they needed to be made different, if I may say so. Okay? So it's a particular pleasure to be sharing the stage with two friends and to be sharing the stage with two people who have a strong connection with Pune. So Ramesh lives in Pune, has spent much of his career in Pune. Arun, before he went downhill and moved to Delhi, used to live in Pune as well, and so we have that connection from our past too. So we're going to organize this session roughly as follows, around three broad questions. The first is, in a very international world, a world of multinationals and tech giants that we deal with every day, of international institutions, of international trade, what's the role of local organization and local action? Second, what is education for? What role does education play as a way of including people in broader national development? What indeed constitutes good education? And third, what's the role of science and technology in where we are and where we're going? Along the way, I hope we'll also hit, what the role of industry is in all of this, in building a more inclusive society, how we get to a more innovative economy, and how can we combine rapid economic growth with greater social inclusion. So the task is to spend about 35 minutes in our discussion, and then we're going to come to the audience for 15 minutes, we hope, for questions. So please keep your questions ready. And the way we've also structured this is that I've encouraged, even though I'll point each question at either Arun or Ramesh, I've encouraged both to jump in on the other's questions and indeed push back on things that I say as well. So let me start with Arun. Our nice introduction said that this was a book about systems thinking, and it laid out the three subheadings of your book. So what's your view of how we shape the future? Because I think the how is very much at the essence of what the book's all about.
Thank you so much, Naushad, and thank you, JLF, for organizing this and for the introduction, which laid out the three principal themes in my book about systems, which is systems being, systems thinking, and then systems acting. I want to acknowledge, seeing this whole crowd, I'm really impressed with the number of people here. But as you said, you seem to know people everywhere. They've come to meet you. And of course, anywhere I go in India, it's not that Ramesh needs to know everybody. Everyone knows him. So I'm getting the privilege of having so many people to listen because of both of you. So thank you. Thank you for including me in this conversation. Systems thinking, precedes systems acting, and before systems thinking, there's a question of systems being. What is systems being? What is systems thinking, systems acting? I would contrast systems being from unsystems being. And to do that, if you'll allow me, because we're talking ultimately about modern science also, its role, I want to go back to the Song of Creation in the Rig Veda, 1500 BC. It asks, who really knows? Who will proclaim it? Whence was it produced? Whence is this creation? The gods came afterwards with the creation of this universe. Who knows whence it has arisen, whence this creation has arisen? Perhaps it formed itself, or perhaps it did not. The one who looks down on it in the highest heaven, only he knows, or perhaps he does not know. This is the humility of systems being. There's no arrogance here to say that I'm outside this system and I can objectively measure this system and explain how it works. I'm inside the system, the reality is, and the system is shaping me. And I've got to be humble about a system that is shaping me. And I come to contrasting this is systems being with systems, unsystems being. Francis Bacon, credited being one of the founders of modern European Enlightenment and modern science, said in 1600 that with science, man now has the power to control unruly nature. And this has been the modern scientific temper since then. That we scientists, I'm including myself, my subject is physics, we scientists, we can understand this system and we know how to fix it. Arrogance, humility. The second comes systems thinking, and what is unsystems thinking? Unsystems thinking is, when there's complexity in the system, you look at the parts of the system and say, if we fix the parts that are having a problem or causing a problem, the system will be all right. No complex adaptive system is healthy by just fixing the parts. We know, as human beings, with our doctors, the best specialist fixing my heart can cause a backfire on my liver. Then the best specialist tries to fix my liver. And then it goes to someone trying to fix the depression in my brain, and I'm not feeling well anymore. Similarly, in economics and public policy, we break down complex problems into, say, there's an industry problem, it's not growing jobs. There's a skilling problem, we're not getting the right skills. We've got an education problem that it's not working very well. Oh yes, by the way, we incidentally also have some social and environmental problems. And so we've got experts fixing environment, society, skilling, education, and industry. And this doesn't hold together, and this is our dilemma today. We are not thinking systemically. This is unsystems thinking. And systems acting, and last thing, contrasting with unsystems acting, acting in competition with others for personal or my organization's gain is not systems acting, that's unsystems acting. Acting in cooperation with others so that we can collectively make the world better for everybody, that is systems acting. Okay, so this is broadly the framework through which I looked at the problems of India and the world. Thank you.
Thanks, Arun. So, let's come to the first question about what is the role of local in an international world. And I'm going to start by making the case that we live in a very international world. For all the talk of deglobalization, trade in both goods and services has continued to grow, including in the last 3 years. Total trade in goods and services is now a bit above $30 trillion. About 30% of world GDP. International migration and movement of people has continued to grow. The migration of people within countries has continued to grow. We see, for example, in India, a large migration of people looking for work from the north of the country and the east of the country to the south and the west of the country. And then programs like JLF benefit massively from being as international as they are, with openness to people and ideas from all around the world. So, Arun, in your book, in many ways, advocates, though, a more local world. Why?
I'm going to I'll use mathematics and mathematical science to explain why. Okay, but I'm going to start with the real condition of the world, which has got, we say, 17 sets of problems described in the Sustainable Development Goals.
Don't list the 17. Don't list the 17.
I won't list them. These 17 problems cover several environmental issues. They cover several economic issues about incomes of people and inequality. They cover several social issues also and political issues. So they are covering a gamut of things, and we reduce them to 17. Now, these 17 problems occur almost everywhere in the world, whether it's Kerala, or it's Rajasthan, or it's the Maldives, or it is the USA. Almost all these 17 problems exist everywhere. But in every place, these problems, each of these problems doesn't exist in the same way today. And the way it is combining with other problems, environmental problems with economic problems, is different in the United States than it may be in poorer parts of India. So the solutions to the SDGs cannot be one universal solution or even just a few universal solutions. The solutions have to be locally specific. Locally specific. I did some calculations that if these 17 problems exist, some 7 of them only, let me say, everywhere, because some people deny that we have an environmental problem, but we acknowledge 7 problems of the 17. How many different ways could 7 problems out of 17 combine? It is 98 million. So there are 98 million possibilities of the shape of a system locally, and so there's no one solution from above that can provide the answers. Each community living with its own environment and with its own social system, and by community it could be a village, it could be a state, has to be figuring out for itself the condition of its system and what would be the right things to do at that time. Pay emphasis to the economy, pay emphasis to something else, not forgetting that all your actions have an impact on the other parts of the system. So this is why we come down to, through science, that it has to be local system solutions, cooperatively found and implemented by communities. That is the only solution to the global systemic problems that the world has. As of now, the G20 said that midway in the SDGs, towards the SDGs, the world has covered only 12% of the goals. So in the remaining time, the few years to get to the SDG goals, we've got to accelerate the pace of solution 8 times starting now. You need, as Einstein said, a different way of thinking if you want to solve a problem which your present way of thinking has caused. So this is my thesis, that we need a new way of thinking and a new way of acting, and local cooperation relating to the systems problems that people have locally is the only solution.
So, coming at this same point from an economic lens, economists who've work in sort of the field of comparative economics have often pointed out that, the subtitle of this session is Remaking India. And they've pointed out that the total proportion of the total government budget that is actually spent at the local level in India is amongst the lowest of any major economy. Much of it, certainly for a country of our size. If you compare us with China and the US, both China and the US, between 40 and 50% of total government spending happens at the local level, not even at the state level. In India, it's under 15%. And that's actually, I think it ties in with your point, Arun. The issue, though, is that in a sense, even though 50% of the government spending happens at the local level in the US, say, the schemes are more centrally designed. And the way in which it gets implemented is left to the local authority. They're not necessarily also raising their own resources. So isn't it an and issue rather than a local or global or a local or national? Isn't it an and? Isn't it an issue of you need both, and you need effective good local, you need effective good national, and you need effective good international?
We need to combine bottom-up thinking and responsibility for action with top-down thinking and responsibility for the condition of the whole. Connecting bottom up and top down is the big challenge in governance, okay? And that's what we say, the top down feel they're experts, they are giving the money, they have the solutions, and they're not able to listen to the needs of the localities because they're too different, and neither are they willing to respect the ability of localities to solve their own problems. This is our problem in India in particular. So learning for the top to listen to the bottom and the bottom to be able to communicate and to be understood by the top is the key challenge in globalization and in governance. And India has a very good program called the Aspirational Districts Program, in which the Prime Minister said, we're going to start with the poorest districts of this country by multi-indicators, and we're going to allow them to suggest what they think is the solution. And as you track the progress of the program, the bureaucrats at the top and the experts and scientists at the top found it very difficult to say, but they will be improving this, but we don't think that is the most important thing to improve. So the Prime Minister has been nudging the people at the top to please learn to let go and support.
So Ramesh, I'm going to go off script a bit and bring you in here on, when you worked on reforming CSIR, the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, which is one of our leading agencies for public research in the country. What was the combination of things that you thought were important to drive as the head of the CSIR system, and how much of it was listening to all the scientists that you'd worked with through your career, that you'd established relationships with, to figure out what was the best way of reforming the system? It was probably some of both, but I'd love to hear how you approach that.
Yes, thank you for asking that question, because that CSI transformation, as you know, has been now recognized as the top 10 achievements of Indian science and technology. What was the big challenge? The big challenge was we had 40 laboratories, National Chemical Laboratory, National Physical Laboratory, etc. And the two would not talk to each other. So the first challenge was to build, let us say, one CSIR, team CSIR. The second was balancing excellence and relevance, because many times in the chase of excellence, you forget relevance. And if you are just going to get solutions done, you say, oh, it can't be a sort of excellence. Yeah. And therefore, bringing them together was sort of a major challenge for the laboratories. Cultural shift in terms of innovation, because innovation is doing things differently to make a difference, basically, So to shift them from one orbit to another orbit was the third one. The fourth one was innovation, compassion, and passion. All three matter, basically. And building compassion, and I'm a great believer that compassion is the key for the welfare of the human being in the future. I was just mentioning to you about my conversation with Nobel laureate Kailash Satyarthi about globalization of compassion on which he's working. So bringing that, for example, and then providing solutions to the problem, because I'm a great believer that science must solve, technology must transform, and innovation must impact. And that impact, making a difference, so what, was absolutely the key. So I thought we worked on these 4 planks. But I would also tell you something else. I was born in a very poor family, and my father died when I was 6, and my mother brought me to Mumbai. And I studied in a municipal school, and after 7th standard, I had a big problem. The big problem was my mother wanted 21 rupees to get me an admission in a school, secondary school, and it took 21 days. And by that time, all the admissions to good schools were closed. And I went to a poor school, and that was a breakthrough for me. Because there was a science teacher who actually did something which transformed my life. One day he took us out into the sun. He had that convex lens and wanted to show us how to find the focal length. And he had a piece of paper, and he moved it up and down, and at a point in time the paper burnt, and he said, this is the focal length. And then he said something like this: if you focus, you can achieve anything in the world. But going forward, going forward, it gave me some other lessons. Because convex lens, the sun's rays are parallel. And the property of parallelance is that they never meet. What does convex lens leadership do? It brings them together. Okay? So getting those 40 laboratories was providing convex lens leadership. In fact, convex lens leadership is needed in the country, in the world. Race, religion, language, we are getting divided. Concave lens leadership will take us apart. Concave lens leadership is what is required globally as well as locally. So I think that was a big lesson, so as to say, which I learned in my childhood that was helpful to me, providing that convex lens leadership.
Thanks, Ramesh. By the way, our very helpful organizers came up to tell me that, your name is Raghunath and not Ramesh, but everyone calls him Ramesh who knows him well. So just to let you know that I'm not getting the name wrong. Yeah. So anyway, so as let's move on to the education point next, right? Education, any liberal, and I've always been very proud to consider myself a liberal, especially when it's used as a dirty word. And a key part of being a liberal is a belief in education and its power. Its ability to empower people, its ability to enable them to succeed in life, its ability to gain meaning also about life. And, my favorite definition of education comes from the Vice Chancellor of Ahmedabad University, Pankaj Chandra, where he says that education it has an instrumental value in that it helps people in terms of livelihoods. It has a citizenship value in that it teaches people what good citizenship and being a good citizen is all about. And it also has, somewhere along the way, the power to help people discover meaning, the purpose of life. What are we here? What are we here really for? And I've always thought that a wonderful definition of education because it really starts at a very base level and then sort of moves up to a higher and more spiritual level. Too often, I think we focus on the livelihood aspect of education. And it's very important because that's the way in which we include people. But if you look at government policy, when we look at governments and say government should be creating jobs, I mean, my own reaction is that's the wrong expectation of government. It's not government's job to create jobs. It's government's role to enable people to get jobs. Arun, would you like to address that? Because it's,
Definitely.
This
Thank
whole
you.
thing of how do you in government, because you've been in government, Ramesh, you've been in government too. How does a government enable jobs to get created as opposed to saying, okay, I'll hire so many teachers or I'll hire so many health workers or whatever?
Thank you. We talked about relevance of something and the excellence of education versus its relevance. I think always one must ask about any institution, including myself as a complex institution, what is the purpose of the existence of this institution and what's the purpose of my existence in life? When I joined the Planning Commission, and Dr. Manmohan Singh, a very wise, thoughtful, quiet, reflective person said, I'm not an economist, he told me, and that's why he wants me there. I've never been in government, and that's why he wants me there. I will be curious like a child, he said, he hoped I would be, to say, why are things working like this? Which is a child's mind. Why are things working like this? Okay? So I joined the Planning Commission, and so happened that my grandson, who was 7 years old from America, he came, and we took him around Delhi, and he saw poverty all over the place. So visible in our streets, even in big Delhi. And so he burst out. He said, what is the government doing? Counting daisies? Now that's a remarkable expression. So his father asked him, what do you mean counting daisies? He said, look at all those poor people. Doesn't the government know they're there? And what are they doing about it? So his father told him, now speak quiet. Your grandfather, who's playing around with you, is now government. He's in the Planning Commission. So he's confused. What is this Planning Commission? So I had to gently try and help him to understand the purpose of the Planning Commission. So he came to the Planning Commission and, watched what was going on. And he looked at my big plans of the previous plans, and it goes on. for so many plans that had been made, all looked the same, frankly, and the numbers may be somewhat different. So he said, Dadaji, grandfather, please don't write another book and don't count it. Yeah? Think about it. Now, this is a young chap of 7. He went back to the States and there's different education. All the kids there in his school in the United States were asked to write, a little piece on what they had done or learnt in the summer. He chose to write a book on the Planning Commission of India, telling me don't write a book. He writes a book on the Planning Commission of India, full of little pictures, because children find it easy, and his little statements below. The last, and he said there are 17 chapters or 14 chapters. The last chapter had a picture of a big room with a big table and this big guy on one side and a very skinny stick man, as children draw, on the other side with hands folded. And below that he wrote, he started the book as the Planning Commission. By this time he said the Planning Community of India. The Planning Community of India is a place where all the poor people of India can come. There will be someone there to listen to them, and then they will not be poor anymore. It really made me think, listening. You can't count people. Listen to them. They may speak from your perspective unscientifically, uneducatedly. That's the real knowledge and the real wisdom which we measurers lose. We measurers lose. Plus, the more important thing I would say, that I realized that if you give someone the respect of listening to them, they get dignity. And the biggest deficit in the country is that people are not in power, especially at the bottom. They don't are given the dignity of your expert, the dignity of your wealth, the dignity of your position and power. They have no dignity and they're not respected. So just listen to Anantodaya Gandhiji said, and understand the needs and make your policies respond to the needs of real people, the real needs of real people. That was the lesson I got about the failure of the global governance system, as well as, I would say, Arun. Thank you.
So, if you were to ask, Arun, by the way, does not like economists. At least he doesn't like the economists that I like. If you were to ask your average economist, how do you address issues of poverty? They would say you address issues of poverty by generating more economic growth. You invest in education as a way of enabling more participation of more individuals in those processes of growth and so on. So I want to come to our third question around science and technology, actually. And if you look at technical change and the role it's played in economic history, it's accounted for over half of all economic growth in the last 200 years across the world. It's true of India, it's true of pretty well every major economy except a few resource-dependent economies. Yeah? So over half comes from technical change, right? And science and technology has much to be proud of. And Ramesh, you're one of our greatest proponents of science and technology and what it can do for the country and what it's done for the country. So
Yeah.
over to you.
Now, if you go back into the history, whatever we are today, without technology, it would not have been possible. Go back to steam engine, electricity, automobiles, personal computers, semiconductor technology. The way they have changed our lives is incredible. In fact, at the turn of the century, 20th century, end of 20th century, the magazine Science, the famous magazine, they asked public opinion in terms of what is the greatest technology which has made a difference. And you will be surprised, it was not internal combustion engine, it was not internet, it was not IC engine or integrated circuit. They came out with Haber-Bosch process. You know what was Haber-Bosch process? Getting ammonia,
Nitrogen
synthesis and natural fertilizer. Because if that was not there, I wonder how many of we will be there. So technology, but I would broaden the definition to not just talk about technology. Technological innovation is just one form of innovation. But it has to be coupled with organizational innovation, business model innovation, system delivery innovation, workflow innovation, and so on. That can create the magic, like Arvind Eye Care. You know, they do eye surgery at a fraction of a cost of 1/100th of the cost that US does, but its quality is as good as some of the best in the world, all right? Now, how do they do that? It is workflow innovation. And it is the combination that works. I think that we have to sort of look at. And the last point is, you know, I'm just coming from London, this Queen Elizabeth Prize of Engineering, which is considered as a sort of Nobel Prize in engineering. It is only given to those who have transformed the world, to change the world, basically, you know. And if you see the winners, like Tim Berners-Lee, Internet, GPS, World Wide Web. Today we talk about solar, okay? And that's a must as far as climate change is concerned. But why are we here, where we are? It is because of Martin Green. His PERC cell technology, that is passive emitter rear cell technology, is the one which moved the efficiencies from 15-16% to 27-28%. And today you can see the difference, they being affordable and the rest of it, etc. So I think it is very clear that these technologies are going to play even a bigger role in terms of exponential technologies that we talk about, including artificial intelligence, generative AI, machine learning, or what have you. The only thing is that how do you make them work for the good of the people? Because it's a double-edged sword, as we know. Drones can be used to deliver, let's say, vaccines or drugs to the remotest corners of the world, and the drones can be used for sort of killing people. And in each of these cases, including generative AI, I think this is going to be the biggest challenge for humanity.
Thanks. I'm just going to come to you, Arun, in a sec. Very often, we think about technology in also in terms of sort of destruction of jobs, and you talk about that in your book, Arun. The example that's often given is that of driverless cars, and I've always made the argument that the smartest driverless car in the world will be easily beaten by the average Delhi driver any day. So I'm less worried actually about some of these actual, automation tools. And if you look at the impact, I think the world would say that net, we've created jobs, but for particular technologies, they've destroyed particular jobs as a result of their either huge efficiency gains or by developing something that makes a particular job or role irrelevant. So Arun, would you take that?
But I'd like to take it to the level, the really profound level that Ramesh took us to when he said, without technology, we wouldn't be alive today. And he said, urea, nitrogen-based fertilizers have enabled us to feed 8 billion people today with surpluses, mal-distributed, but overall surpluses, whereas just 100 years ago, there were just 2 billion people on the planet. This couldn't have been possible without what you call modern chemical-based and mechanized agriculture, very, very clearly so. At the same time, we do know that our environment, the soils, the water systems are getting despoiled. So our concern is that while we think we might have enough food, we won't have clean air, we won't have enough water to live. So I'm going to just read this book, just 2 lines out of the book by Vaclav Smil. He's an environmental scientist, a Czech-Canadian environmental scientist, and the title of the book is How the World Really Works. How the World Really Works, a Scientist's Guide to Our Past, Present, and Future. And here, these 2 lines from the book, few lines. This provides a useful guide to the profound economic transformations that would have to take place with any retreat of agricultural mechanization and reduction in the use of synthetic agrochemicals. The greater the reduction of these fossil fuel-based services, the greater the need for the labor force to leave the cities to produce food in the old ways. The title of our session is Remaking India. Today, 64% of India's population is dependent on livelihoods in rural areas, associated somewhat, not directly always, with food systems and things that are growing in the countryside. Okay? In China, it is 36%. In the USA, it is 17%. So he says this will force labor to leave the cities to produce food in the old ways. We've got the opposite problem. We've got to enable those people to earn enough, be respected. We are looking down on things which are rural. Urban is the future. We look badly on agriculture, get people out of agriculture into industry. Industry sounds like a good future, and so do cities. And here you say India can provide the solution to the world. Please respect and listen to our farmers. Please respect and listen to women who are India has the largest number of women in the workforce in the whole world. So I hear economists saying we need to get more women into workforce. A woman is working all the time, doing care services, and in our farms, they go out and look after goats and cattle and do some digging also and carrying of the water. Please, we've got enough women in the workforce. We don't respect their work. We don't give it decent economic value. So we have the potential for solving our problems if we think differently about rural, village, and what a factory means, what a job means. And maybe we'll find a solution for the world. Vishwaguru.
So one of the things that I was going to ask Arun about was migration, because we have a disagreement on migration from rural areas to cities and the role it plays. But I think we should come to all of you for questions. So we'll take sort of 3 questions at a time. So we'll start with the gentleman standing up over there, then go to the back over there, person in the red shirt, and then come to the front. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for the session. Just wanted to check, recently Jason Hickles and all are writing books like Less is More. But even yesterday, Less is More, Jason Hickles on like the degrowth is the solution to climate change and everything. And recently, yesterday also, Raghuram Rajan mentioned that India will double their GDP by 2035 something. So do you think India's focus on GDP specifically is going to be a bad parameter? And also that redistribution should be our goal. Like at the end of the day, it should be the matter of the fact that Global South, I know, needs GDP growth, which Global North has been doing for years now, but does it become our responsibility to redistribute the resources in this country?
You just pressed Arun's starting gate button, but anyway, we'll come to that in a minute. Yeah.
Hi, thanks for a great talk. You touched on the theme of building solutions locally. The Indian setup encourages centralization, but also, as somewhat of an economist background, incentives matter. The Indian state doesn't really encourage decentralization and doesn't provide incentives to bureaucrats to take risks. How do you create a systems framework to encourage risk-taking, but also to encourage devolution when the bureaucracy is inherently risk-averse? How do you build those incentives there? And how do you account for capacity gaps between local governments in, let's say, Bombay versus Odisha? All of those are local solutions. There's a big difference there. Thank you.
Thank you. And last one in front, and then we'll hopefully have time for another round if we're really efficient with answering questions. So, yeah.
Hi. My question is, which Naushad sir, Arun sir touched upon, that government works as an enabler and facilitator of job, not creating a job. So recent article in The Wire, they said this particular government for the past almost a decade or something, they have hired more than 1,500 consultants from Big Four consulting firm, and they're paying around 300 crore annually to them. So on one hand, they are hiring a consultant outside of the job, and on the other hand, they still say they are just an enabler and facilitator. Other thing, these 1,500 consultants are apart from those departments of the government, from Niti Aayog and any other, which is close to retired bureaucrats.
Your question is?
Question is that if they are not a creator of a job, but being an enabler and facilitator, they're not enough creating more jobs as per se, according to policies and regulations.
Okay. So Arun, you want to go? You want to go first?
Quick
Yeah.
points to all three of them.
And then Ramesh, you please add.
Quick points. Yes, I was a consultant all the time, and then the Prime Minister asked me to be a consultant to India or the Planning Commission, and the question was to be an enabler and not to provide the solution, but the solutions will come in the system. So is India a faster learning system than China? China's GDP in the same period, from the 1980s till the time I was in the Planning Commission, had grown 5 times faster than us. So that whole complex system, very poor also, had learnt as a system to solve its problems in a way that it had created that much more potential wealth around. The word we keep using is, well, one side degrowth and the other redistribution. Let's think about the words. I'm not suggesting we have degrowth in inclusion, not suggesting we have degrowth in environmental sustainability. Yeah, if it means that the GDP will not grow, but we have more inclusion and we have more better environmental sustainability, I think that's healthy growth. So how do we measure growth? We're using just one indicator, which is the economic size of the system, and forgetting the social and the environmental conditions of the system. To the point about incentives, and also can't we learn from where local governance is working? During the pandemic, and this is where migration also comes, the whole world had to lock down and to isolate states or countries, communities, so they didn't get infected by others. And what happened with that was a couple of things. One of them was that the economy also suffered, that people then couldn't earn and suffered. Second was loneliness and depression. So then one asks is that which localities of the world came out the best through COVID in respect to not just keeping fewer people infected or dying, but also their social system becoming healthier because people supported each other, and the economic system least damaged. Internationally, in terms of countries, Vietnam did the best, and in terms of all the Indian states, Kerala did the best. Now, Kerala, as we all know, Kudumshari and so on, it is now the world is turning and saying, hey, you people know how to do local governance, where the government supports local things. I'm saying in India itself, we don't, because we say, wo to communist jagah hai. Vietnam also wo communist jagah hai. But they're showing that there's a top which ensures that there's some rules, and you don't do bad things like infecting others, but there is a compassion for the health of the whole system. So we should learn from why in some places is the top and the bottom working more effectively together, and in other places it is not, within our own country itself and between countries.
So, and the question on how do you incentivize bureaucrats to take risks and do the right thing?
Aspiration-driven transformation is worth studying. I've written a paper on it, was requested to for the Global Solutions Initiative. And I was given access by Amitabh and the others to interview the people, both the civil society partners of the Rural Improvement Foundation, as well as the people in the Planning Commission itself, Rakesh, Niti Aayog we call it, time. And this is what they came down to, that you see the bureaucrats are incentivized in India to keep the system under control. This is the old ICS carry on to IAS. The prime job is law and order and ensure that whatever taxes are due and the financial compliances are ensured. This is not a developmental orientation. And we look, therefore, the theory of development means I am an enabler and a facilitator of the system. So the changing of the mindset of the bureaucrat. But the bureaucrats who got involved and did very well, some of them, and some couldn't, and they pointed out that, look, you are providing a structure for teaching us, then judging us, and what do you judge us by? And we contrasted this with China. China has, like I said, grown very well. We found that in China, you got a one communist party. All the functionaries in the states and the cities have to be communist party functionaries, mayors, vagera. The targets given to them, and the China is run by engineers and not by economists, the targets given to them is the whole system should improve. Environment and so on. Most importantly, the people better remain satisfied, otherwise we'll have another revolution. So, and people remain satisfied, like I said, when they feel included and the solutions are solving their problems. So learning this skill of being systems leaders, that's why my book says it's a guide for systems leaders.
So Ramesh, would you
Can
like to add
yeah,
something? Because then I want to get at least a
I'll,
couple more questions. Yeah.
I think
Yeah. Yeah.
we need some innovation. So I will ask a question to the audience, okay? And there is a message for shaping the future when that answer is given. How many of you can run a kilometer in 4 minutes, 30 seconds? Kindly raise your hands. Yeah. So about 6-7% of the audience. That means 94% cannot do it. The reason I asked you, we are in the city of Jaipur, and we should celebrate the spirit of Jaipur. Because I am an engineer, a technologist, it is the Jaipur foot that I am talking about. I give lectures on Gandhian engineering, getting more from less for more. I give lectures on affordable excellence. Okay? Because if it is excellent, the word is the market. And if it is affordable, India can benefit. And finally, I show a film of Jaipur foot, where somebody who is wearing a Jaipur foot, which costs nothing but $28, by the way, not $10,000, affordable. He climbs on the tree and jumps, and then runs a kilometer in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. These are the technologies that the world requires, that of affordable excellence. When we talk about inclusion, making high technology work for the poor, and that's what it is doing, because he is actually beating 94% of you by just paying $28. Not only that, he gets dignity, access to dignity. All right? It is not access to income that is the end goal, but access to dignity is the end goal. So since we talk about shaping the future, I think we should also look at an Indian solution to shaping the future. That is affordable excellence, that is inclusion. I thought I'll make that one comment.
I'm going to take one more question because we have only 1 minute left. So yeah, at the back, please. Red shirt again. I sort of like red. Yeah. Yeah.
You seem great. You enjoy the things great. That's good.
Yeah.
You can't get the mic to him?
If we can get you a mic fast, otherwise. Is there a mic there? Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
Sir, sir, if you want
quick-
to ask
quick-
on behalf
quick
of
question,
me, you can
please,
ask. No, the old gentleman wanted.
Yeah.
I am an engineering educator involved in environment.
Yeah. I'll need a very quick, precise
Yeah, the
question,
question,
please,
yes.
because we have half a minute.
See, we have in decision making and management, it is being done by collectors or what or not. When you said multi-level, multi-objective decision and uncertainty,
your question, please.
Huh?
Your question.
How do they really make the decisions on the basis of rational, mathematical, logical analysis?
Fortunately, they don't. I think that's the point. I think we have to say that you can't measure everything mathematically, nor explain a system through just maths. There's a limitation to maths, and that was pointed out by Kurt Gödel, that maths is become like a self-contained system. We make certain presumptions, and then all the theories add up. So it is about humility again, that my science is a limited tool that I have created. Yeah? And so be humble about the expertise that we have, and just listen to the system.
I think that's a good message to end on, to actually be humble about how we approach problems and how we approach solutions that we think are right as well. So thank you all very much for your participation today. I would encourage all those of you who were not able to ask your question to please come and, we have a wonderful word in India, it's called Ghirao. Come and Ghirao Ramesh and Arun and ask them your questions, and they'll be at the back signing books as well for all of you. Thank you very much.